thank you so much for having Kim and I here. Actually, Kim, when I first met him, he was Commander Humphrey to me. I'm also from law enforcement. And I've known Kim and Michelle for, gosh, coming up on 20 years. It's been a long time. They are two of the kindest, most loving people I've ever met. Anyone come from like military or like hierarchical organizations where it's, you know, chain of command? Okay. I was a detective. Okay, let me tell you how this works. Detective's at the bottom, then you go sergeant, then you go lieutenant, then you go commander. So which means to have a commander to be kind and friendly and human is very odd. And he was from day one, and Michelle was the same. So fast forward, I actually transitioned. I spent most of my time in law enforcement and undercover narcotics. And I saw the impact of drugs. I saw what good people out on the streets who wanted help. They really did. But they were paralyzed by addiction. I also, like most of the people here, have family members who have struggled, lifelong struggles with addiction. So when I left the police department and went over to NAU, I run the Justice Studies program, which is like criminal justice, more of an ethical component. And then I knew a little bit about Kim and Michelle's struggles with their sons, just from the contact we maintained over the years, even after I left the department. Again, because Kim, even though he was a commander, was just a good person. And then fast forward several more years, and Kim had shared PAL. And he talked about all the stories, and he talked about all the hope that he had seen from families. He talked about families who were totally devastated by their loved one's addiction, and they were able to find hope. They were able to find happiness. They were able to have some mentally they were able to improve. And he said it was phenomenal. He goes, he's telling me the stories, some of the stories he shared at the beginning with everyone here. So he asked if I could evaluate the program. So I brought in a colleague of mine who, Kristen, she was not able to be here tonight, and her background's in behavioral health. So together, we put together an evaluation project to evaluate the effectiveness of PAL. Now, who's students here? Who's a student? Okay, great. So if you have no research, and you have nothing, you have someone who's telling you all these stories of anecdotal evidence, right? Things that they've experienced, stories that they've heard. The first thing you have to do is start small. So let's try to test some of these. Let's try to see if, you know, we're getting some positive results. And that's exactly what we did. So this actually started back in 2017. So we've been at this for around a year and a half. So there's two parts. Good. There's two parts to this. First is we want to look at the curriculum. Because if you don't have a curriculum that's based on evidence-based practices, the curriculum's not good, right? Then it doesn't matter if they're teaching the curriculum to everyone, they're teaching something poorly to everyone the same way. So again, that's Kristen's background. So she looked at the curriculum. Let's see if this is based on evidence-based practices. Is PAL teaching things that they should be teaching to get the results that they want to achieve? The answer was yes. Let's look at the organizational structure. Let's make sure that PAL is training everyone. Again, this is peer-to-peer, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's make sure that everyone is being trained according to the evidence-based practices. So if we're not doing that, then again, we're not helping everyone how we need to help them. That would be another, you know, shortcoming of the program. It was. I have to tell you, Kim is one of the most organized people I've ever met. What he has done with PAL in this relatively short period of time is nothing less than remarkable. He has built this organization. If you see the organizational chart, it is unbelievable. You would think it was something from the military or law enforcement. It is that detailed. There is not anything that was left to chance. And it is because of these details that PAL has been able to succeed. So one of the questions that Chris and I also wanted to look at was we hear the stories from Kim, and I would do anything to help Kim and Michelle. So he just has to ask, but beyond that, you know, how big is the scope of this problem? How important is PAL? Okay. Does addiction stop when somebody's 18? Now, all of a sudden, if somebody's 18, all of a sudden the parents no longer are involved, care, consumed by their child's addiction? Absolutely not, right? But yet most of the research that you'll notice, that you'll see out there, is focused on juveniles, juvenile addicts, parents of juvenile addicts. So you have this group of parents, loved parents, parents who love their children, and they're hopeless. They need support too, so they can support their addicted loved one. And the resources aren't out there. So PAL's feeling a need. Number two, again, Kim and I came from law enforcement, and in my years in narcotics, we would, investigate drug-related crimes, even on the street. If you're in patrol, you go out to a house, you're for a family fight, and you happen to see, the 30-year-old who's, high on meth, and, family fight, they're causing all this strife. Police department, you try to separate everyone if there's not a crime and so forth, but now these parents are left still with this addicted loved one. Is there any support given to them? Police, we come, we investigate the crime, we put a Band-Aid on it. If there's no one to take to jail, we leave. But PAL, if this is an effective program, law enforcement has another tool. Remember, law enforcement, we're there to help the community, not just to solve a crime. We want to help. So this is filling a void in the community for law enforcement and families. So Chris and I were all in. If this is as effective as Kim was experiencing, then we have something wonderful for the community. So all my students out here, the first thing you start with are the research questions, right? So what do you want to find out? If you're going to conduct evaluation research, you have to start from the beginning. What do you want to answer? So it started obviously with Kim and doing some other research and talking to some other people internally within PAL. What are your goals? PAL's main goals were, number one, we have evidence-based curriculum, okay? Number two, that we help members, their members, which the PAL, people who participate in PAL, those are called members. The PAL members, we help their mental and physical well-being improve. And then also we give parents the tools to help support their addicted loved one find recovery. And again, these tools are based on evidence-based practices. So then our job as researchers was to find out if these things were happening. So again, we started small, reviewing the PAL curriculum. And again, Kim went over this during his initial presentation. Kristen found out that it was based on evidence-based practices. So everything that PAL said it wanted to do, the curriculum was designed to obtain this goal. So now we're good, we checked that box off, right? We have the organizational structure, we have a solid curriculum. So now let's see if the members are actually getting out of it what they need to get out of it. Is the delivery working? Again, we have to start small because there hasn't been anything done before with PAL. So I started with interviews. And again, small number of interviews, people that Kim was able to refer me to that have participated in PAL. And every single thing that Kim said was echoed. It was the most moving thing I have ever participated in my life. Hearing the stories from the parents. And in one case, two parents, husband and wife, their daughter was an addict and their granddaughter was an addict. And the stories they told about being at totally rock bottom, they've given everything emotionally, everything financially, they've done everything they possibly could do. They've gone across the country to try to save their daughter. They've gone across the country to try to save their granddaughter. They've done everything and nothing has worked. And they were totally destroyed. I was interviewing a couple again, and the father's in tears crying. It is so devastating. But PAL gave them hope. They gave them hope. They gave them light in the dark. They gave them hope for the hopeless. And with that, they found a resource support for them. So God willing, their loved one did find sobriety, but what we'll find out is that that is a little bit out of the control of the parent. But at least PAL was achieving its goal. It was improving the members' well-being. So now we had a solid start. also had the opportunity to interview 2 recovered addicts whose parents had attended PAL. Again, triangulation from my students. So we're not just going to use one method and call it a day. We're going to try a couple of different things and see if our results all match, right? So now let's interview the addicts who actually recovered with parents who attended PAL. They said the same thing. They said that it was their parents stopping the enabling, it was their parents stopping the codependency, it was their parents taking these measures that PAL teaches in their program, but this is the key, this is what's interesting. It allowed them to hit their rock bottom. And it was their individual rock bottom. One girl said that she kept going to rehab, she would be high before she hit the parking lot. There was nothing her parents could do. But yet, when the parents started implementing, as difficult as it was, these lessons, then the addict hit their rock bottom, and then they sought recovery, and that was their journey back, which is exactly what PAL's curriculum is based off of. So again, very small sample size, but so far, we're on the right direction. So what's the next step? Do we want to stick with the 6 people that we're talking to and the 2 addicts, or do we want to have a bigger sample size so we can actually generalize some of these results? Exactly, so that's exactly what we did. So we're going to start with quantitative surveys. So we looked at the entire PAL distribution list. So basically anybody who had registered an email address with PAL at any time since its inception. So of course, some of these people are no longer active, but we wanted to be able to survey everyone. We ended up being a little over 3,000 people that we sent surveys out to. Surveys is a SurveyMonkey link. We also put it on Facebook, hoping that maybe we would generate some interest that way. We ended up getting 606 respondents. It's very impressive, very solid number. We want to gather some demographic data. Again, PAL hadn't been researched before, so we really wanted to get an idea of the people who are served by PAL. So that will help PAL also to, if necessary, to modify their program, to hone their program, give them some good feedback to be able to make the program as good as can possibly be. So most of the respondents were female. And also, and this should be no surprise to anyone, again, we're looking at adult addicts, right? If you look at adults, the parents are going to be older. And so most of our participants happen to be 50 or over, and most were women. 18% women, 82% men. And this was interesting. So again, as PAL is just for parents, and Kim talked about the importance of filling that void for parents. But this is such a need in our community, that we have this population that is being underserved, and there's no place for them to go. So even grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, they are going to PAL for help, for support. So that means that you as students, as you graduate and move into the world, look at this, try to help support this underserved group. We want to find out the drug that most of the addicts used. Any surprises here? Alcohol, Kim talked about that. And with what's going on right now, heroin and opioids. Now, opioids are just synthetic heroin. So, as we know, when people can't get a hold of their prescription pain medication, narcotic pain medication, they're switching to heroin. So it was no surprise that these were the top substances. But also, it's a variety. They're not picking just one drug and sticking with it. It's a variety of drugs. So it's not like you could have a treatment program or a program that just targets just one thing. They're mixing a lot of different things. We want to find out the people who participated in this survey, are they actively going to PAL or not? Find out that most of them are still active. And this is important for the next one. Most of them are going for over a year. They've been participating. This is a solid base. So the members are engaged, they are participating in PAL, and it is serving a need. Otherwise, they'd go one time and they'd call it a day. But PAL is helping. They are reaching people. And most of them attend PAL on a weekly basis, or 55%. And then we saw the 20%. people who no longer attend PAL meetings. So we wanted to find out why. Obviously to give some feedback to PAL, or maybe we're missing something. Number one, PAL provided me with the tools to help myself, so I no longer feel the need to attend PAL meetings. 40%. Those are 40% of those people who never would have been helped if it wasn't for PAL. Then we look at the bottom where it was 45% for other. So we had to fill in the blank. So for other, what are they going to put? And if you look at the bottom, some people just answered that question twice. So they said they were still attending. So we take that out. We look at, I want you to look at number one and number two. Loved one overdosed or died, or loved one found sobriety. There really wasn't any correlation that one thing led to the other. It is addiction is heart-wrenching. As Kim talked about in his presentation, that he deals with death all the time, but people who are overdosing. It is a reality of this. So whatever support we can give to parents to help them with this horrible situation, I mean, is amazing, is wonderful, is good for the community and good for everyone. We wanted to find out if there was one specific piece of PAL that happened to stand out. You know, it's peer-to-peer support. Yeah, they have videos, they have guest speakers, non-judgmental environment, things like that. And there was not one thing that came out. So it shows that people are getting something out of all the different parts of PAL, which means there's nothing that I can go back to Kim and say, you know, you really should change this, emphasize X over Y. It's all working. Everybody's getting, significant number of people are getting something out of all the different facets of PAL. Again, goes back to supporting the curriculum, supporting the program. Now here's the nuts and bolts. So member well-being and strategies to help support their loved one and to kick their addiction, right? Stopping codependency and enabling, and then physical and mental health. So the survey was divided up into several different questions, Likert scale 1 to 4. This is what we're looking for in these numbers. 3 to 4, agree or strongly disagree. This is not pre-post. All this is asking members to evaluate their own feelings. Did PAL do X on these different areas? So it's very straightforward. It was a very short survey for people to complete, which was good. Did they understand the programs associated with enabling? Ability to stop enabling. Understand problems associated with codependency, setting firm boundaries, support addicted loved ones' recovery, and then improvement in members' physical and mental health. Every single one out of all those respondents, okay, look at all those people, we look at the average for all those respondents, and look at that, 3.62, 3.27, 3.64, and so forth. So with this group, this sample, PAL is doing what it says it's able to do. It is reaching people. It is helping their mental and physical health. It is helping them with strategies to stop their addicted loved one's addiction. So then what's next? So we have this sample. Pretty significant number, right? Good number. But again, my students in the class, if we design a survey that says, did your mental health improve, is that the most scientifically significant survey? No. Again, this is incremental. We've been doing this for a year and a half. Start with a very small sample size with qualitative interviews, get some data, try to support it, and keep building and building and building and building and building and building. Every checkbox, everything, we've had three different entire studies now. Every single one is supported PAL. It's great news. So now we're going to get more scientific. Now we're going to look at actual, some very valid and reliable instruments that are measuring well-being, measuring depression, and so forth. And then we're going to pre-post it. So when a member comes in, we're going to give them the pre-test, and we want to follow them incrementally over a period of time. We want to be able to give the richest data back to PAL so they can develop the best program possible to help the community. What they're doing right now is working. Let's help them make it even better. I cannot thank Kim and Michelle enough for everything they're doing for the community. It is honestly a privilege to be a part of it. to do anything that's going to help people and serve this need. And again, I mean, I have family members who are suffering just like a lot of you out there with family members who are facing addiction. So thank you to Pal, thank you to Michelle, and I thank you all for everything you're doing in your field.